A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to video games that are totally awesome. As expected, while I will pretty much get the release dates of my episodes for this series figured out, as well as a good scheduling system to get these up and running, just so I can have enough time to not only get these episodes made, but also to have these episodes arranged so that way there's no delays or there's any complications that arise from this. After all, I can't really do these on a daily basis anymore, knowing what else I have to do with my life. In any case though, what I'm going to be talking about today is another section of more modernized gameplay, and I feel like that one good example would have to be Diablo 4. Yeah. You're probably wondering why not talk about the others. Well, unfortunately we hadn't really played much of the other Diablo games. Diablo 3 we got brand new back in 2012. But I'll admit, that was more my brother's thing and not mine. And then of course there came along a Diablo 2 remaster just a few years ago. But that was mostly just as a means to make headway for the fourth game, which itself came out in fall 2023. So, much like Dave the Diver, we have another contender of the year 2023 that I've pretty much left out in every other specification, you know? No matter what it is. There was HDN graphics and super graphics, two whole series that I put together for gaming, but it seems that's not really enough. But anyways though, Diablo 4, as the title itself suggests, is the fourth installment of the Diablo series, a game that is focused on the unique location of Sanctuary. The landscape that in fact allows for a number of travelers, warriors, and other such personnel to thrive within, to enjoy a simple, peaceful life, unless they dare to trek the lands, high and low, dark or light, and whatnot. While the blood may spill, victory can always be assured, provided that you are well prepared to take on the many threats that dwell within. And in this case, I will say that Diablo 4, with its unique overhead perspective, like a few other games that I had talked about before, as well as the dungeon crawl and hack and slash variety of gameplay, they are well present in this title, just as to be expected. Also, it's worth mentioning that this one is built a lot different than the other Diablo games. While I'll admit, I'm not exactly a hardcore fan of the Diablo games, nor have I had much experience with the franchise. Even though I've had some time spent with the likes of Diablo 2 Resurrected and Diablo 3, it's still important to note that I'm still not exactly as captivated by the series as well as its unique feeling of giving us the somewhat bloody and mystical atmosphere that is often associated with Sanctuary. But the thing is that Blizzard Entertainment was mostly responsible for the publication, while their developer teams, known as Blizzard Team 3 and Blizzard Albany, as in New York, were mainly responsible for the game's development and publication. While we did have the likes of Gavin Wishaw produce the game, Jason Regier be the main programmer of the game, John Mueller did the artwork, and Raphael Pradzalik, if I pronounced that wrong, let me know in the comments, he was the one who wrote the game. But we certainly can't forget about one major thing that this game does have to offer. Its plot. You see, this basically takes place about 50 years after the events of Diablo 3, and a certain demon known by the name of Lilith apparently is resurrected. And there is actually a main playable character in this game who is simply known as the Wanderer. And she apparently becomes involved in all this, mainly because of blood petals being fed to her, causing her to have a connection with Lilith herself. And while I did say that the Wanderer is actually a she, that's mostly because this game does allow for you to customize your Wanderer in many ways. You have different classes to choose from, and you also have different specifications. Gender, height, skin color, blood, hair color, etc. As well as the name, which of course is to be expected, as this is an RPG game. I of course named my character Millie Brockovich, native to Finland, and well known for her ability in weapon mastery, as well as some martial arts. Although, in-game, she's just known by the name Millie, no Brockovich, because for whatever reason the name template didn't fit that many characters. You think they could have had enough space for 2 words or something like that? Anyways, though, the game mostly does center on the Wanderer. In my case, her name's Millie. After all, I did name her after that succubus demon from Hell of a Boss. Married to Moxie, of course. But in this case, though, this Millie that I got in here, she's basically a weapons wielder for the most part. She carries a lot of blades, as well as the occasional bow, which in my case was usually a crossbow. Although I did usually make time for that of having compound bows and whatnot. In any case, though, she dons herself a unique set of armor, as well as her many weapons, as well as some jewelry. Because that's how I just intend to pretty her up quite a ways, for Sanctuary itself. The plot mostly does carry around with the Wanderer, or Millie in my case, being put through a tavern, and eventually meeting up with a few other characters along the way. As it does go around, the story eventually does get more impressive, as well as more linear for the most part. This sort of story-driven narrative in which that it focuses more on the people of Sanctuary itself rather than anything major that goes on in Sanctuary, including political power or war or anything that does involve more of the higher beings combating each other. It was a unique move that they decided to make here. They decided to make Sanctuary more of the inclusion within the narrative itself. And the storyline does in fact center almost entirely within the land itself, which in my case was a pretty unique idea. This gave a lot of room for me to explore, as well as some creativity in mind. And like with any other game that has a large map, RPG elements and whatnot, there's lots of things you can potentially do here. In my case, my explorations of Sanctuary did evolve from simply visiting a tavern to getting kidnapped and fed blood rose petals, to having a connection with Lilith, to meeting up with a number of other characters, to encountering certain creatures along the way. I mean, it got as simple as to having such things including cadavers and skeletons, and enemies that explode, animals of all sorts including bears, wolves, and some felines. And then of course with some of the more ridiculous characters out there. Some of those giant ones with those huge clubs. Like I said, not really being a fan of the Diablo series as much, there's only so much that I can potentially talk about here. But I at least have had a good amount of time spent with Diablo 4 so far. And being that Millie has gone through so much, I reckon she's going to be ready for a lot more. Because as of late 2024, only 1 year after the game's release, wouldn't you know that this game has made over $1 billion by this point? And has gotten 2 major DLC upgrades. You have Vessel of Hatred and Season of Witchcraft. But unfortunately, I have heard from some Redditors, for instance, in which that 2025 doesn't really seem to be a point where any more Diablo 4 related DLCs or expansion packs or updates will probably be taking place. So I can't see that happening either. But then again, anything could possibly change. I do got lots of things that I can probably work on just as well. There's a lot of games that I am going to be settling my eyes on, and I'm sure that some of you guys might have similar plans like that as well. In any case though, with Diablo 4, the unique RPG capabilities including leveling up, the usage of potions for healing, the usage of dashing, the usage of different weapons including swords, daggers, blades of all sorts, bows, special moves, as well as the unique addition of jewelry, body armor, etc. There of course is also the usage of a point system in which that allows for special skills to be used, and you can hold a good amount of them at a time, and by performing a certain button combination in several different ways, you can use these attacks to your advantage. But like certain things, they do have to charge up, which kind of sucks. Using potions, especially while having to wait for them to recharge as well, can be kind of cumbersome and a bit tedious in a way. It's also a bit tough, knowing that some of the bosses out there could probably drain your health rather quickly. I mean, wouldn't it make sense to have as many potions as possible and to use them as much as possible? I don't really know how that's supposed to be a thing. But with all that's covered, the storyline that I've gotten through so far, I still do have yet to beat it pretty much. And maybe I could check on the likes of Vessel of Hatred, Seasoned Witchcraft, and other things that the game has since gotten. But until then, I can't really say that I will go much further into the game as is. When I finish it, that's probably where I'd usually cut things off. Any other way you look at it though, I do enjoy this game for the many, many things that it had to offer. The unique way of hacking and slashing through your enemies, crawling through dungeons and finding treasure, as well as various items, going through all those monsters that are around in there, it's usually a little scary every which way you look at it. Just chopping through and all that blood is squirting out, man. It's no wonder why Sanctuary is just full of a lot of crimson cores. And that unique feel that's come from Diablo over the years, with the somewhat religious aspects towards it. I can't really wait for what a Diablo 5 could offer. We already got Devil May Cry 5, so why not follow up Diablo on that part? Or maybe even another series, for that matter. Otherwise, not much more for me to say on Diablo 4. I do like the variety in gameplay, as well as the unique challenges that are set upon the player. Because no matter which way you look at it, everyone likes to have a little challenge, whether it be safeguarding a certain treasure or helping to escort somebody. It's usually a lot of the same old stuff that we've seen from other games over the years. But in my eyes, I do tend to find these to be just as much of a challenge as any other game would potentially give you. For Diablo 4 scoring, I will say, we've had a lot to work with here. And while the game is still unfinished, in terms of my playthrough thus far, I've gone through a good amount already and explored through a lot of different towns and visited some taverns. Had a lot of trade-ins every which way, gaining myself some currency. And using that currency especially for upgrading into better weapons. So for the overall scoring, I'm willing to settle at a good 8.0 out of 10.1. And while some people might give this praise in similar aspects and even loving it, mostly for the graphical feel of it, I'm usually all about the gameplay. So, with that in mind, maybe if you come back later and video games that are totally awesome will have a fresh new segment, usually something that's much older, but I'll be occasionally willing to throw in something newer, especially if it's something that I have not already talked about yet. I feel like this series is going to give me that good of an opportunity. So with that in mind, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side for more.